There is a lot of designer ego, though. Like, I have it.
Heck yeah.
Right? Like, I mean, we're
We're the
perfectionists.
best.
It's a thing. It's a thing. I
Tis
struggle
a
with
thing.
it. I struggle with it. We're design snobs. I mean, that's what makes us good designers. We're snobs.
Thank
we
you.
have to be.
Thank you. Welcome to the Marketing Team of One podcast, where we have conversations about the issues one-person marketing teams face when trying to meet their goals with limited time and budgets. Welcome to the Marketing Team of One podcast. Today, we're lucky enough to have a special guest with us, leader extraordinaire, president, CEO of YourBrandSpark.com, Calvina Nguyen. Welcome.
I am so happy to be here because it's you, Eric. I mean, it's, you are a very, very important person in my life. So seriously.
Okay. I should be on the crying couch. I'm starting to well up.
No,
My makeup.
I'm so excited to be here. And as I was driving here, I was just thinking that I don't know if there's any other person who can probably bring some of the conversations that I think I can talk about here, just because you know me from we were friends from our 20s, like really early on when we were just starting our families and when we started our careers together, literally within days of each other.
But you claimed I was in my 20s. That was awesome. That's the highlight of my day. Thank you very much for that. I was well into my 30s, but that's different. Well, you look like you're very relaxed. This is a very natural thing for you. Thank you for being here.
This is how I sit on a couch at home. So thank you for letting me sit like this.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're just chilling and chatting. We brought you on because, for one, I know that you do a lot of really interesting work with a lot of small companies, organizations, YourBrandSpark. So your history, let's talk a little bit about where you came from and what brought you to starting your company that you run now.
It started with me working with design agencies and, as a designer and, from a junior designer all the way up to working, doing more managing bigger projects and, taking a bigger role in design. And then when I started my family, I decided to really take the time for my family. But then there's the entrepreneurial side of my brain that never stops turning. And, that kept going even as I let go of my full-time job as a designer in an agency. And so that's when I started my photography business. So I've had my photography business for 15 years, and photography was my first love, and really stumbled upon that, just doing what I loved. And then so eventually, basically by the end of that career, I was doing brand photography. I was traveling I was doing projects in India, working with nonprofits and small, social enterprises over there who are working. And I did brand consulting. I did photography, basically helping these businesses to pull together a voice, to give them a voice. And what they're doing is giving a voice to the communities that they're helping. So a lot of them are purpose-driven types of businesses, and that's kind of where my heart is. And so it's all about giving a voice. So I was really putting together all the design and the art directing and also the photography in all of that. And so what I saw during that period of time in working with small businesses and small brands, and they're all small because they are a lot of these businesses are just, they have a heart and they have they're like, I want to start this thing, I want to do this thing, but they don't know where to start, how to do it. And they're trying to really have a bigger voice in the marketplace.
How small are we talking? 1, 2, 15, 30?
It depends. Some of these, the social enterprises are large. Well, the forces are, they're, basically training up artisans in these marginalized, communities in another world, basically. But the teams themselves might not be big. They're probably, 5 to 10, if that, like many, much even smaller, but they take on a lot of different roles. Their primary role is to care for the community and to connect the communities. But then there's also a business aspect of what they do, which is they need to sell the goods to like basically enable them to like care for that community. Right. And so I, like that's where my heart is like, okay, there's so many businesses out there who are doing good, who really start wanting to like make a big difference in the world. And there's so many, you know what I mean? Like those are the businesses that I really care about. And they have a hard time with their budgets. They have a hard time with, resources. And so that's why I think I have a really big heart for small businesses with small teams that are stretched to the max. But then, so I'm no longer sitting in a place where I'm doing design for, these big corporations that have the budget to have like not only their own design team, but to be able to hire out an entire design firm and a design agency to do the work and then like do all that stuff. It's a very different kind of a place, right? And so these small companies will need to be able to figure out how to market themselves. They have to understand what they want to say. So they don't know that. They don't understand enough about their own voice. They know why they got things started. They know their purpose. They know their vision. But what they don't know enough about is like, how do I get more visibility? How do I look more legit? Because they're like doing stuff on their own. They don't know. But they don't yet have the budget to really be able to pull together or even hire an agency or
So let's talk. You talked a lot about brand specifically. Yeah. When you say that, what do you mean by brand? Because everybody comes into this with, we're trying to help people understand what the word brand means.
Okay,
yeah.
So this is how I like to define brand. Because of my design background, I specialize in visual branding, right? But there are so many different levels of the word brand. Ultimately, if you really like boil it down to its purest form, I think a brand is a relationship. It's a relationship between your audience and you, right? You as in the business, and then the audience being your ideal, who you're talking to, and you need to know enough about them. And so, in like what I see it is like this merging point in the middle, and your brand is like what happens in the middle. Right. So you have so it's basically your business. You have a story, you have a vision, you have a purpose, you have a certain aesthetic, you have a certain vibe, right? You're not going to appeal to every single person. You only will appeal to your ideal audience and who you're specifically wanting to cater to. And so now that your ideal audience have their story, they have their needs and their pains and all the things that they need their problems solved. They have their vibe and they have their story. They have I said the story already, but they have a certain sensibility about them. And then so when you have and merge together and you develop a brand that fits both of you, that's how you're able to connect and attract and also like retain this relationship that is about trust, really, right? And then so I think we're kind of in a place in the world and marketing where a relationship is everything. Trust is everything. So brand is all about that trust. And so there are different aspects of your brand, right? Visual is only one aspect of it. But there are so many different things. There is even like your personality, I think it's, like showing up and just like being vulnerable and just talking into like a video and doing that. And it doesn't have to be, processed or anything. That is a brand in itself. Right. And then so the genuine feel. But what we specialize in, like what I specialize, you and I like have our background because our background is in design, right? Like, so the things that we are connecting is like the colors and the fonts and the logos and, and then the layouts and the big, like, creating a campaign that can actually, resonate and all of that stuff. That's, I feel like, is the visual side of things. And that's the stuff that I do that I specialize, and it's what I do in my business. But beneath it all, however, I feel like there's so much more. And I feel like it's really the tip of the iceberg, right? It's the visual stuff is the tip of the iceberg, is what people see. But what I truly care about is the stuff in beneath. And there's more of that than just the visuals. There is like,
So there's words with that. That's
Yes.
I immediately think like, marketing and messaging is around words and visuals, and we're very visual people.
Yeah.
I didn't do great in English when I was in school, but that's another podcast. But the words are so critical. Do you work with a copywriter? Do you have specialists? Do you have people that you pull from? It's so hard. We talked about being genuine, and I think that's where, the rise of the robots takes away that genuine thing. So those who are concerned about robots, yes, it's a fear. It's genuine. I get it. But that's one of those opportunities where I don't think the robots can come in and provide that kind of genuine storytelling as much as something that we can connect to.
Yeah, I think, well, for me, it depends on the project, right? So there are certainly projects where I, when if there is a lot of storytelling and a lot of copywriting that needs to happen, then I would bring in a copywriter partner who would work on a project together. But right now, like the part that I love, and it's not, and honestly, it's not what people are used to, and it's not out there. And I think this is the part that I care about the most, is actually working. And I think this is why it puts me almost in the more of a place of a coach than in actually a place of a designer. I'm more of a thought partner, a coach with these small businesses than necessarily even as a designer. I mean, I do the design for them, but then I think what they value the most is what I bring into like actually getting all of the things out of them, fleshing out. It's almost therapy, like getting all their ideas so that like almost reflected back to them as if it's like a mirror, and then they're like, oh my God, like I didn't even realize that. And then, so I do run a program. This is the thing that I'm probably most proud of. It's a course program called Brand in a Week. And what I do is like in a single week, it's group program. So people will sit together and do it. And these people have no design backgrounds. They're like not designers, and they're not, they're small businesses. They are like, some of them are coaches. Some of them are product-based businesses. Some of them are like, I have, like a therapist who was like a service-based business, and then like other educators and consultants, like all of these people who are their own small business in themselves. Like a lot of them are, one or two, person businesses, and they want to get their ideas, like they visualize it, they can see it in their own heads, but they have never been able to really put anything on paper that looks good to them. They might have hired a designer to do something, but it's still not who they are, because maybe during that process, they focus so much on the visual aspect of it rather than maybe what's like their vision and what's like the feelings and the stuff that's like beneath it all, that they're like, it's I'm almost flipping things on their heads, where it feels like, oh, this is not anything that I have ever done before, like pushing, it really is like a therapy session. And then, so when they come out of it, I'm teaching them to kind of do some design themselves, right? Like, so I'm, helping them teaching them to mood board for themselves, taking their ideas. And then like in that process, like by the end of the week, they've got their logo sketched. They're like not finalized, like a lot of it is sketched. And so, some of them, they move on. Like if some logos are good enough to go, but then a lot of time it's like, this is an idea. I definitely need some fine tuning. Like, and then I would tell them very honest, I'm like, that's not going to fly. Like a logo you need to have all of these different versions of a logo. This is way too busy, or, like for me, I'm like, it has to exist in a single color. If it doesn't exist in a single color, it's too complicated. It'd be you can't shrink it down to this big, or if you can't blow it up to this big, then it's not going to fly. So I'll give them, like, I'm totally honest with that. And like, we go through and have them figure out like their fonts. And that's the thing, is that like, you can go have a designer go through all these things. What I found, because I've delivered enough,
right,
brand, the brand systems to people where like they love it in the moment, but when it comes back to them, and I'm like, why aren't you using it? Like what's happening? They're like, oh, there's something that it's not resonating. I don't know why it's not resonating. And I can't, like, and then so basically going through this program, they get to know a lot more about design in itself. They don't have to be designer. And I tell them that. I'm like, you don't need to be designers, but you need to know enough to be able to know what to do with like any branding system that you get in the end, right? Like you need to know enough you need to know how to hire a photographer. You need to know what kinds of images that you need that will convey your brand well.
You're building a toolkit then that you deliver to their internal marketing team of one person, whoever that was. Who's
and they build it themselves.
And they do everything themselves.
They do it themselves. And then so I guide them through that. Yeah. And it's like intense, like 1 week boot camp where I'm like, no, like this is not like, but the thing is like, I am, but I guide them through figuring out what they want first. So I'm giving them basically a compass. So it's like, then this is the part that I think it's hard for some people, because it's like, it's hard for, I guess, I talk to a lot of designers that are like, I don't understand, like, how can you, like, but they're not designers. It's going to be crappy. Right. So for me, I'm like, my goal isn't necessary that they come out with the absolute perfect design. It can be some of these, like some of the stuff I've seen is insane. Like some of the stuff people, they'll go through at the end. They're like, I cannot believe I made that. Like
that's
it's,
fun.
they're like, this is unbelievable. I didn't even know that. Like, they're like, I didn't use my favorite colors. I would have not used these colors, but these work better because I realized this will resonate better with my audience.
So they're equipped with now a story and a reasoning and a background that's like, nope, this is why our brand can't do that.
Yeah.
It's got to do this because of what you've discovered.
They discovered. And then so they'll say things like, my tagline's been wrong all this time. Or like, my offerings, I need to now restructure my offerings entirely because there are things that I realized about myself that I didn't even like through that process of really like defining all that stuff.
What kind of troubles do you run into? I can't imagine every one of them is like, this is easy. I can do this.
Not easy.
I mean, is there ones where at the end of the week, they're just like, I'm done. I can't, this is terrible.
The hardest part is for them to realize that they can do it, right? And then so, and I think that's my biggest challenge in even marketing my own services. Most people don't feel like they can, right? Like I'm not living in a world, right, where this is the norm.
Right.
So from the designers that I talk to, they're like, you're crazy, like why are you training these non-designers to do this design? You're basically flooding the market with like really crappy designs. Or, I'm like talking to, small businesses, like, I don't have design training. Like, I can't do this. But I've done this enough with like people I've seen that I'm like, it works. Like the success rate that I have at the end of my program is no, they may like they're not gonna. I'm not training designers here, right. So of course I'm not. They're not necessarily going to be creating like massive campaigns. They will probably still need my help, or a designer's help to put together something. But in the end, what they can do is that they will know exactly how to communicate to a designer later. And then, or they will know how to like make things their own. We're currently living in a place where like small businesses need to turn media on a fly. Back in the days when, you change the date and a time of an event and you have to spend a day sending it to designer and then they fix it and they spend like going back and forth, that just doesn't fly. Right. So how do you, how do you simplify a system so that you can market easier and better and then like being able to, for the small businesses to feel empowered, but it's not just the empowering. I think it's the light bulbs and the light that that I see in their eyes that they never thought about themselves. Like the things that I hear from them was like, I feel so brave. Like, you made me feel brave. You made me feel like I'm worthy to be out in the marketplace. Because so many of these small businesses, they don't feel like they've ever felt legit. So when they have a final brand that feel really proud of, they're like, I can do this I can actually do this.
Well, and it speaks to them too. I mean, the ability of them to want to embrace the process and understand the power that brand can bring to their organization. I think that's, once you make that realization, then you're hungry for services like what you're talking about, probably, because it's that you need to build that underlying passion and understanding of how critical your brand is to the public.
Yeah, exactly. And my goal is to not necessarily replace designers with this process. My goal is to bring more like joy and realization how important branding is.
Well, and ease the relationship with that outside, so that when the designer comes to you and asks why, and you say, because you're empowered to say, hey, this is why.
Yeah.
Our brand is this.
Yeah. Like one of the businesses that I worked with, like she is like really grown now. And then so now she has the budget to hire like custom illustrations. She wouldn't have been able to know how to articulate what kind of illustrations she has. But now she has this brand guide and the brand kit and this whole development, like this brand system that she just sent it over to an illustrator, explained to everything. And then she was like, she got exactly what she needed.
Nice. A process like that is good because they know they're making the investment in doing the process. They're going to have strong understandings and passion behind their brand when they're finished, but it's only a week. And then after that, they can, or you can help them get things out there. Now, curious about words. I know I keep going back to words, even though we're designers. Is that part of the process too?
Yes.
Explain a little bit about that.
Words are the main part of that. Like, and I realized, and so like, I've done this brand in a week program for, like quite a few times. And the things that I'm like, I basically drill in is I'm helping people translate words into visuals back into words. And then it's the cyclical thing. And the more you go back and forth with the words to the visuals, then the more and I'm constantly making them define their feelings in words because it's all about emotions, right? Like the whole point of having visuals is that it's the most powerful way for you to convert emotional, like make an emotional connection without, without even having the time to read anything or even to hear anything, right? Like words, right? Like whether it's coming out of your mouth or reading things, it's like, you're seeing the colors, you're seeing the composition, you're seeing the vibe, and that's going to immediately grab your attention and make you stick around to actually pay attention to the words. Now, but these visuals don't come about by itself. It comes from the feelings, but you have to translate these feelings into words first and these words into visuals and then back into words and then back into feelings. And so like, it's this constant thing that I'm throwing at people. I'm like, well, how do you feel looking at this? Like, what are you trying to do? Right. And then, so it's just this, so it's a back and forth thing. And so that is the most important exercise. And so my students come out of this and they're like, oh my God, like there's so many words that I haven't thought about. That describe the feelings and that describe the vision, that describe the story. And then from these words and they go into the visuals. And then also like, on a technical level, all these things go into the keywords, it goes into SEO, it goes into the kind of copy you write. They all really work together. So you need to be able to understand. So that's where I'm like, helping them to figure out that vision and the story and the vibe and all of that stuff. They all are cohesive and it all starts with words.
Interesting.
Yeah,
that's good. I as much as I try to avoid words in my life, it's just something that's gonna have to. I guess I can't give up on it. Huh? It's important.
And I think that's the and the words. If you think about it, it's a way of our expression, right? I mean, like your crying couch is like, it starts with being able to express your feelings and your frustrations and your vision and that passion and the purpose and the fire. And when it comes to a small business, that's everything. And that's why they're doing it. And that's why I care about the small businesses way more than like the ones that will have like already, corporate, all of that stuff, because there's a fire in a small businesses that are still alive and raw, and it's powerful. And most of these small businesses, that vision comes from wanting to make certain change, in the world, whether it's it's a gap that they see, it's a need that they see, that it's a change, something. And I always believe in these small changes can change the world, right?
Well, and that's the thing, is you can connect personally with small businesses and organizations with the people directly. That's their killer app, right? Is that you get this, like, I know that person, she's great, and you've got this other energy rolling around in your brain around who that person is that's just kind of locks it in even further. Do you ever experience where somebody comes in and is, I just need to make more money, I just need more revenue, I just need this? And then how do you deal with somebody who maybe, because you speak to emotions and you talk to feelings, there are people out there who are not really connected or maybe even uncomfortable with those feelings. I wonder, how do you work with those kind of personalities?
Honestly, you can't create any business with just money in mind, right? Like, I don't think that, like, you could. I mean, even my business, like, even though I'm like all like about feelings and and purpose and all that stuff, like, I can't make my business run without revenue. So like, I don't think that like money and revenue, all that stuff is independent of vision, right? So still, like, you can't just come into the world and say money, money, money. And like, so even within that money, there's a reason they've chosen this particular business in this particular format for a reason, right? Okay. So like, I chose to make money because, I'm good at design, or I chose to make money because I'm good at finances. Whatever it is, there is something there. So there is something there. So like, I'm good at finances, or I really think that people need to know more about finances on this level, right? And so there's always a story there. You have to be able to make that connection no matter what, right? And then so, and there is a story. I think even if that person comes in and say, I want money, like, well, what's your business about? And then and they'll tell you, and then it's about technology, and then so will tell me why you think this technology is the most important thing, for your clients. And so, well, this technology, so there's always this heart, there's a purpose, so I think, so now that the story then is about the technology and how this technology is better than other technologies. And then why should their client care about that technology? Now you're digging into the needs of that client and their story and why they would choose this one over any other, right? And so now you're now tying that in. So in that way, you're eventually always going to lead back to the revenue. And like, I think revenue is always a byproduct of like being able to communicate purpose well.
There you go. That's pretty good. I like the way you sum that up. Well, and I think, it sounds like during this process, I mean, is a lot of it formalized, like fill out this questionnaire and then we'll talk about it? Is it like literally like therapy? There's a person on a couch and there's handkerchiefs and my mom, didn't do this. And,
so, it's so interesting. Like so I have the program, which, so the program is, formulated, because I have pre-recorded stuff, like me talking clearly, and it's just like they listen, but it's very short. It's like, this is why you're doing this, because I don't like people. I mean, I don't have time to listen to people talk all day long. It's like, get me to the work. Like, I think it's in doing people learn. So I'm trying not to like have people listen to me talk, but of course they have to understand a little bit something. But most of it is me guiding them in the doing. They're learning through the doing, and so there's the pre-recorded stuff, and then they do it. And then so that brand in a week, that 1 week is when they show up, and then I'm critiquing.
Okay.
So that's what it is. So that's the most powerful, the powerful part is the personalized feedback. I actually see what they're doing. So it's through the work that I see. So, I mean, I am actually like I'm a, that teacher. I was like, you're not showing your work. I can't help you. Like I'm like that because true. Like if you don't show your work, if you just, like I can, I can tell when somebody's put effort into it, and just like everything, right? Like you put effort into it, you get more in reward. And so I'm able to work with those who put more into it because I can see more. And, but then of course I have my private clients, right? And then so the private clients, then I do more of the work, and I still feel like that process is more removed for them. Because it's all in my head.
Yeah.
I do it. I'll create I'll create all of the mood boards and the direction and the visuals, and I can describe it to them. And like, I will have, very typical, like agency process where you do your presentation. I always feel like the gap is in between there. And then so like, because of that, like, I feel like, I want to, my one-on-one work, I want to do more work with them where I guide them. It's more one-on work, but then I want them to do the work in the brand in a week, because I'm like, I need to see your work. I need to get into your head.
So that's where it's almost like
it's important.
The D student walks into class and like, dog ate my homework.
Yes.
Whatever.
Because, and that's that this is the part I think is probably my, like, be completely transparent, is probably the part that makes my own marketing harder. Like there's not anybody doing what I'm doing. It's not what people are used to. I'm kind of bridging the gap between what used to be, which is like, I'll do all the work for you and then you run with it. Most of the time, almost every time, I deliver great designs. I deliver great photography, but it really sucks when I don't see them using the photography, even though in that moment they love it. And I ask them why, and they're like, well, I just don't really know how. I don't know how it fits. I don't, I want to, but it just, or I see them using it wrong, and I'm like, oh, it'd be so much better if you used it this way. So that means it's like that education process, I feel like it's crucial. And then so, I think it's important for like marketing teams to be educated on this stuff. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, so if I'm talking to a marketing team, I think these are important education things, too. And it's just like, how do you use it? Like, what is the most effective thing? And so that's the problem. And this is why I see it in this gap. This is why I'm so passionate about it, is that when people are hiring me to do photography, it's in my head. It's my creative vision, and then so when it gets back to them, it's like they're not making the most use of everything. But if I am able to like bring them alongside me and almost co-create together, which also requires, which is very hard for designers, and it took some time for me, is I have to let go of my own ego. I have to let go of my own ego. I have to realize things are not exactly going to be the way I want it to be. But if they have more ownership of this branding, then they will be able to make more effective use of it.
So in a sense, you will hand over the reins of trust to those that you feel have done the work, genuinely are passionate about their brand and their design and their messaging and what they're going for. And you're just like, all right.
And that's why I think in terms of messaging, especially depends on where is the stage on this brand development process. A lot of the messaging is they realize a lot of things. Like I've like seriously, like through the, like say the brand in a week process, they've come up with new taglines. They've come up with new things, because you're like, oh my gosh, I was going the wrong direction all along. Or like, I realized there's a new name for myself. Like I've had people change their business names in halfway through. They're like, that's not actually what I was going, because I realized I thought that's what I wanted, but I think that's not what really my audience needs. And that's why people say, I thought that my brand colors would be my favorite colors, but no, that's not. Like, you had me looking into colors that completely I would never have chosen, but I think works better now. And then so that's why I feel like branding is, design is just the tip of the iceberg. It is just what people see. There's so much more beneath it.
It's like a soul,
Yeah.
right, to that organization.
Like, yeah, I mean,
or
like
whatever.
really, truly. I'm like, I'm writing like a blog post about this. Is like, like the big thing about like that, like literally the iceberg and beneath the surface, it's like all the stuff. It's all the things underneath, but then like the tip is what you see, right? And then so that's what visual branding is. And so, but then to get to that visual brand, of course you can create. I mean, like it's not hard to create pretty designs. I mean, like, and that's why I'm like, when you can, we like templates are so readily available now,
Yeah.
right? Like, they were not available even Adobe back then, but now even Adobe, there's like templates upon templates you can like access, like, but it's not going to be effective in our marketing strategy if it's just pretty.
Yeah.
And then so it's got to be able to make a connection into a vision and people do, so that's why I think small businesses need to be able to know what their stories are so that they know how to, eventually like my goal is that when they grow, when they're big, they know how to. Now they know enough about their own branding and be able to like give directions to, the designers that they hire and that, and they would be able to have better sense of these things. And because I'm a small business, I've been owning a small business for so long, whether it's running a photography, company to where I'm at now is that, as much as we want to outsource, you can't outsource effectively if you don't know it yourself.
Good. Yeah.
Right. And then so like, of course you can have someone else build out your systems or whatever it is for you, whether it's anything, is that like, you can hand that over, they can do it quicker, but then like there will at some point be this disconnect where it's like, what are you doing? Like, why is it not working? It's because there is some kind of disconnect. And so, so that's why I feel like this brand language, is so important.
So speak to me. I'd love to hear some success stories. Some, person came to me, didn't have anything, or one person in a truck, and now they're run the world or something.
So, okay, like some of the earlier businesses that I work with, a couple of actually product-based businesses, one, she started her business making lip balms. Right.
Okay.
And then so she, and then she realized just like everyone loves my lip balms. And then I'm giving them away. And then like eventually it's just like so many people asked her, just like I'm selling them. And she was like really surprised by how much money she was making on selling these. And then she started just to turn it into a business. She had no idea. She was like, I was literally scribbling, like just hand drawing these labels on there. And then I had no brand and she didn't have a name. She was like, I don't know what to call myself.
Wow.
And then so, so she like went through like, brand in a week. And then so in the end, like I did help to finish her logo. Her final logo was done by me, but she created all of these things where I got everything out of her head.
Yeah.
And she developed all of these things. So the final branding system, I helped her to pick it together. So I know it works. I know every single color will work together.
Yeah.
We came up with 8 colors. I always do that. I'm like, I'm like
Wow.
4. Yeah. Because I feel like, it's different than what, back in like, I know, like, my original days was like, you have 2 or 3 colors. I feel like, because they need to do so much, there needs to be like a supplementary, palette, like 4 colors that I feel like you need to be able to have on WhatsApp. You don't have a white. What do you use? What is that cream color that you're going to use instead of white on your website? You know what I mean? Like you need that. And then so you need like you need your neutral tones to counterbalance your main like primary like colors that you use to exude your personality. And so I come, so I know like, and I know enough times where I've done this enough where even when they do a rebrand, I'm like, just shuffle your colors and see what you come up. She's like, oh, I'm like, you notice you didn't have to change your colors at all. And they're like, oh, you're right. Like this set of colors can look feminine and masculine. It can look fun and it can look professional and corporate.
Wow.
and be able to like shuffle all that stuff. And then so anyway, she is like, so she's the one who we become really good friends in that time. And then so now she's just she is able to create a very successful business. She loves doing pop-ups. So she's like in San Francisco doing markets and doing, and then so her brand is beyond just her labels and her, it's like she's putting together basically her entire feel, like this her entire aesthetic of her entire shop based on the brand that, we've created together, because there's a guideline now. Like she knows what kind of colored tablecloths she should have. She knows what kinds of, plants she should have on her, and all that stuff. It's just easy. And so she was like, people come to me because of my branding. Like they come to my booth because it looks so good. But they stay because my product is great. And then that's what I want. Right. And then, and it's a joy, I do think that the people who do really, really well in my course are the ones who are creatives themselves, right? Like they're creatives, but they're not designers, right? They understand it. They appreciate colors. They appreciate like all of these things. And so that's why product-based businesses who are creatives and makers who have a sense of aesthetic, they love it because they're like, I don't know design, but I know creative, I can appreciate it. Yeah. So like I'm giving them basically all of the missing parts of their language to be able to put together this for themselves.
It's like you're a translator from this wild, energetic, creative brain, translating it to the business world and maybe the consumer itself. You're making that connection in a sense, right? Yeah.
And then so having that logo. So I have another, product-based business, but that's, I still remember the moment I saw her logo come together. She did it, the whole thing herself.
Wow.
I didn't touch it. I was like, that is insane. And I'm like, she did it herself. And then from the moment, and she was able to put together her colors, I kid you not, that was a 7-day. By day 7, her whole website was done.
Wow.
She was that driven.
Jeez.
She redid it. And so now I go and I look at her Instagram, her photos are different. Everything is different. This is from 2 years ago. Wow. And then so now I look at it, I'm like, she's completely transformed her business. And then, and then that's the thing is she was like, you've helped me to look things very differently. She's like, I never understood how to create mood boards. I've never understood how to create an aesthetic, and then so, and that's the thing is like, even those who I have someone right now who's going through it with me, and she was like, Calvina, if you can do this with me, you can do it with anyone, because she's like, I can't do anything visual. And then so, but what she created now, it's really awesome. And I'm like, you're not giving yourself enough credit, because most people don't. And then,
was she just like a word person? Like I can talk about feelings and
no, I think she just has no sense. Like she felt like she had no sense of aesthetic. Like she's like, like from her current stuff, it's all over the place.
Yeah.
But now we were able to, I'm like, just distill it down. I'm like, just keep it really simple, right?
Yeah.
Like let's just keep it minimal. So I gave her actually a word. I'm like your aesthetic that we've come up together, it's minimalist, it's minimalist, contemporary, modern. So now you know what you want to look like.
That's got to be easy then for her to translate it in her head.
Yes.
That doesn't fit. Okay.
Exactly. So I'm like, so that means you only use one font, and we're going to choose that font, and it's called minimalist modern aesthetic. So you want one word, one photo on white. That's it. Right. And then so I'm able to kind of help her to do that. I'm like, and then so she'll bring in stuff, and then she was like, I'm like, it's, you're putting way too many colors. Yes, I helped you to develop these colors, but I'm like, use these colors only to flag certain ideas, but not as your main aesthetic, and don't use them all at the same time, and so different aesthetics are different things. And so, and then I of course would have somebody who is she does costume designs, and she sells it to to theater, and she sells it to even Hollywood. And so her aesthetic is taking repurposed clothing and turning it into something else, not clothing, just repurposed anything, and she turns it into upcycling. And then so her whole aesthetic is crazy, busy, funky, and then so her tendency was to throw everything in there. And I'm like, okay, well, there needs to be an order to your funky, and then so I'm trying to help her define what her order looks like.
The world can't handle your funky.
Yeah,
we need to clean this up.
Yes, and then so I'm like, so then you put her side by side with the other person who's about sustainability, who is the modern minimalist. I'm like, do you see how different you you are, you guys are actually doing very simpler things. You're repurposing things. You're about sustainability, but your aesthetic is completely different.
Yeah.
And then that's what defines you as a brand. And that's why I'm passionate about it. When people see how different they are, they're not threatened by anyone else doing something the same as them, because there's no such thing as anyone doing the same thing. Is that even if you are, you and I are designers, but we're so different, like our approach is different, our passion is different, like everything is different. And that's what makes us great. And that's why it'll be great for us to collaborate and help each other rather than like feeling like everyone's competing against us, right?
It's too big of a world.
Yeah,
at this point.
exactly. And then so I am like, when people say come into the program, they do the same things. There's never ever once where people felt like I'm threatened by another person, because they realize now the sense of their individuality, their uniqueness, how special it makes them. So it is a transformative thing on the inside, and that's why I'm like that. The visual is just the top. Everything else at the bottom.
Yeah. There's a lot of similarities, but there's also so many differences. And it's funny, we as a culture are so tuned in now to brand because it washes over our brains. So we actually, our antenna is tuned into all of those little intricacies around brand differentiations that maybe 30, 40, 50 years ago didn't exist at all.
Yes.
People didn't consider it or to have any value.
Or wasn't important.
Yeah.
And I think because I think the method of branding it's changed. Like the method of delivery, the method of how people are consuming information has changed. And I think largely it's because of social media. And, we're so overloaded of information. So whereas we're no longer in the days of Mad Men, right? Like when you have time to work on that kind of campaign, things are quicker and faster. And then so in my best way, I'm just trying to fill that gap, right? And for that change.
When you're working with people, there's a feedback loop that needs to take place during this. How difficult is that? Do you feel like that sometimes they need more and more or less? How does that work? What's the process, I guess?
Yeah, the feedback is the most important part of this whole thing, is what I've realized, because I've taken, quite a few groups through this. And I've even tried this program in a different format and in a different way where they get less of my feedback. And because, honestly, you can take this course on your own. You can self-guided, you can do the whole thing. It's like all the information is there, right? It's in there, it's pre-recorded. It's in the form of like an online course, like any online course. But the most powerful part of this is this, like when we're sitting in a group during that boot camp. So honestly, like the brand in a week is the boot camp week, right? That's the key thing. But you can, a lot of these people, they've had depending on when they purchased the course, they would have had that already, but the boot camp itself. And then so they have work to do. They've got, they're learning by doing. But then what's really reflective is this work that I see, right? What I see. And then they talk about it. So it's, I have to do this in a really small setting. So like no more than 20 people, and then so they're watching everyone else do it. And then so, and I've done it with a tiny group to like, or even a group of 1 or 2 to like a group of like, 20. Right. And so it really depends on, and they've all gotten different things. Like the smaller groups are like, I had so much of your time. That was awesome. But the ones who had in the bigger group, they're like, I loved seeing other people's transformation because it gave me so many ideas of my own. And like we can like bounce, the energy was different and it was still just as good, but just in a different way. And so, so that personalized feedback is the most important thing when I can see, and just like the teacher, like, like who can see a student's work, you don't get it. I mean, I can tell when they don't get it. And then, but I can like find that pain point and push them. And I can say, okay, you're not getting this part. Like, but I like the first day is all about getting things out of their heads. It's helping them to define it's a discovery process. I guide them through a discovery process. So that means I start seeing them and I teach them how to start seeing their own vision, and basically move, like bring it out. So even people who are expert marketers can go through my my program. I actually have like VP of marketing, like going through it, but then they've never gone through it in their own head. They've never like saw things through their own lens. And then so that means it's like it's a therapy, right? Like being able to see and reflect back to like what they feel and hear to actually see it. But then when I see what they come up with, I'm like, you know what, based on what I know your vision is, I think that you need to get more narrow and to hear, move in this direction a little more, create more, more definition for this, because I think that you're not there yet. I'm very honest with them. Like, you need to push harder, you need to do more.
And your thinking, your philosophy there is to kind of keep
Help
digging and going deeper into that niche. So very narrow, very deep.
Yes, deep. And then so they need to feel it and hear and see it. So sometimes, depending on their commitment, depending on like their level of like, I guess, either expertise or like their, like how savvy they are, like I have, people get different levels of success, but, but then if at the end of the week, even if say they have not like, and there have been people where it's like, ooh, at the end of the week, it's still not quite there. If I can get them to truly like visualize, like put into visuals what they're feeling and their vision, then I consider that a success. And so that the program in itself is 3 months long.
Oh,
so it's called Brand in a Week because the boot camp is a week, so they can complete it.
Yeah.
So most of them by the end of the week, it's done, and so they've gotten like all the pieces, but they need to practice it.
Yeah.
So they need to implement it. So I'm like, that the week is done, but then I'm like, okay, well, does it work? So we need to actually put it into practice.
So then, talk a little bit about that, because that would be my next question is, great, you've handed this thing over, and if you're lucky, you get to do the implementation and build things out for them. But here's this baby now of you're going to hand this over to another team, or what do they typically do, and how do you give them tips or advice? It sounds like you've got more into the program.
Absolutely. Yeah. So actually my ideal scenario, like I would consider myself success if they can do it on their own.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, for my monetary gain, of course, come hire me. And there are times when, I don't know, like in terms of success, like, I want them to be able to own it. I want them to know it. So we will start actually doing projects. So during that is no longer every single day. We'll meet every other week. And then so they'll bring in projects that they've done, like whether it's like hey, I've been wanting to redesign my whole course, my whole workbook, my lead magnet, my, I've had product-based business that spend like the next month or up to 3 months redesigning their whole product, all their product labels and tags. And like, I need to maybe pull together an event. So whatever, everyone looks different, right? Like, and so I need to pull together an event. I need to design all the signage and all that stuff. And then so they'll bring in all the work. And then so that means, I can give them that personalized critique and say, you know what, that design is, and that's when I start like really teaching them visual hierarchy. This is way too many words. You need to edit like crazy. Let's take this out. This is not effective. This is busy. And like, that's when I'm like kind of go into a little bit more of a design class type of a thing, but it's their designs.
So it's like a DIY model, really. You're just the coach, the guide.
And I'm the coach. And then and then so again, depending on how committed they are to their own craft and their own work, they can really take advantage of that, and they can like launch websites during that time. They can like, they can be like completely redesigning the entire, like their entire, like say if they're a coach themselves, then they like, work on all their course slides, all their, their workbooks, they can work on all that stuff. So every, they can really take advantage and be targeted during that 3 months.
Because they're familiar with the platforms. They've done it already.
Exactly.
They just need to go and replace.
They just need to replace
and
exactly, and then so there's just need to replace their all of these things, and so that's what the 3 month is for. It's just to really get that work, and then so and it's at the end of those 3 months they're like, okay, can you just do some more for me? And then so I'll just take what they have and I will really now I see what they're after.
Right.
Like I'm in their heads. I can see it.
Interesting.
And then so I'll take their existing work and I can actually create things for them. And then now they can really run with. Now it's a real complete brand.
So let's talk about the beginning of this story. I'd love to learn, like, how did you come up with this concept of, there's the we'll do it all for you, there's the do it with you, and then there's you're going to do it and I'll guide you. That wasn't as common, I don't think, years ago. But
still, I don't think it's common.
Yeah.
It's.
Where did it was it just a request from one client? Was it something that you purposely, like, hey, this is what I see in the marketplace? Was it a combination of that?
It's something that I wish I had as a small business.
Yeah.
I had to design my own website, right? I had to come up with my own branding as Calvina Photography.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know. Like, I was way too close to my own brand. I hired my my friend who was a designer to do my logo because I'm like, I can't do this myself. I'm way too close to it. But it just all this painful back and forth even then. And then in the end, like, and it's like, so, in the end, she just did the logo for me. That's it, right? Like, I still had to come up with my colors. I still had to figure out which is the best fonts to use. I had to do I had developed and designed my own website, do all of that stuff. And I'm like, I wish somebody could just tell me because I'm way too close to this. And then even as a designer, and so these are things that I wish that I had. And because I run my own business, as one, right? Like, as that one person, I'm like, you got to do your own social media post. You got to do all of these things. You got to do everything yourself. And it's like, because that's why, these small teams, tiny little businesses that are starting, and that it's very difficult to prioritize their visuals.
Yeah.
Because they're working on their revenue, they're working on their product, they're working on that. Their stuff looks like crap. So always I feel like when people come to me is that the perfect time to come to me is like people who have been in business actually for about 3 years or so, that they've actually been doing it themselves for all of this time. And they realize, well, for me to get to the next level, I got to stop looking like crap. But I recognize the importance of remaining in this, doing this, because, especially where marketing is now, like I want to be able to give direction to my team. And so I need to know more myself.
And it's interesting because you're helping them build a system. And I think that that's really probably the only way that these initiatives have success, is if it's not just, here's a bunch of stuff, good luck. It's really more of a system and a way of thinking, and maybe helping them to organize their day, month, week around some of these goals, time block things out so that, okay, I'm going to work on the website, but with this realization, with this clarity and this set of tools.
Yes. And
boom, boom, boom.
Exactly. And then actually I'm talking to more agency friends who have been needing more of this. So I'm in some conversations where I'm working side by side. Like for me, like I am a small business. And so I'm working with these small businesses, but I see the importance of all of this in marketing teams and be able to provide this kind of level of service and education for teams. And then I also have agency friends who are like, I see the gap and where you can fill in in that education process, whether it's in the very beginning or at the very end, and then still have the design team being involved in doing all the things in the middle. But that's just that the level of depth that I can get in the beginning is important. And also the level of education in the end, where I'm like, let me help you transfer this so that your team can feel more equipped with knowing what to do. That's important too.
Do you do a lot of teaching of tools specifically, as far as you're this kind of an organization, you're going to want to use Canva and HubSpot, and you have this prescribed solution?
Well, right now my primary thing is Canva, because of the fact that and I was in the middle of, I know as I was telling you, it was like, it took me years to get over my own ego, design ego, is that truly, there's still, I think Canva is up and coming. It's huge, but then there are things that Canva can do that, I would still, there are things that I would transfer from Adobe to Canva because it's so much faster for me to do in Canva, right? And Adobe hasn't, truthfully, hasn't really perfected the speed and the efficiency yet, because they're so good at creating, the power, and they're so good at that. I mean, like nothing on either end. They're both great products, but I just truly use them for different things. And so I do teach that. And then, so I am kind of a tech, but I haven't really taught tech necessarily other than Canva, just because I'm like, oh, there's one more thing to teach. But I have a huge tech stack that I personally use. Right. And then, so, I, in some of the, if I have an opportunity to work with clients, then I do that, but it's not in my my normal teaching. It's just one more thing for me to teach. I mostly teach Canva, but I teach Canva in different ways. I'll teach Canva on how to use Canva for say, how can you use Canva for your link in bio? That's a really great way. You don't have to pay a link in bio. You can just use Canva to make a link in bio, because you can almost publish that as a website that you can link to. Yeah. And then how do you use client portals? I'm not in a place where I feel good about using Canva, quite honestly, for websites, but but for a client portal, yeah, when you can just publish a link, and then you can have all your portal information. It's free, and it's operates like a website, and you have all your client information. You can create this beautiful user experience for them in Canva. So stuff like that I'll teach on the technical level.
Let's break down what you mean by portal. Just explain what that looks like, because that could mean a few different things.
Portal.
But I want to know
for me, I use Canva for my client portal. So
say, what is a client portal?
Portal. And all the information that I need for them to know. So when I deliver something to a client, I'm here are the steps in your here's the roadmap, right, of what our process is going to look like. So I'll define that on there, and then I'll update that, and then links. I'll create links for them. So here's my presentation here. Here's something that they can easily access, and with a single link, they have all the
everything's right
there. Directory, everything.
Files,
deliverables right there too.
Okay,
so nice. I can link that, and so it's a website that's done. I don't need to have this complicated thing of having to embed this into my current website and have a login and all that stuff. I'm I don't want to deal with that. I just want to deliver something that my clients can bookmark, during our project, and they can go there, and all their deliverables, all their presentations are in one place.
Do they get to keep that forever then?
Yeah, because it's on my account. It depends on if I feel like shutting it down, but it's but usually for the length of the project.
That I think is something that is really a critical tool. So for any, especially single, solo marketer, is limit the amount of clicks and places I got to go to find everything. I know everybody still struggles with that.
Yeah. So I like to, I'll teach stuff like that. But usually it is in the Canva base. But then just because I've come to love that for running multiple aspects of my business, more than just design, right? It's just, it's really functional. Yeah. And then I edit videos on there because I can it's not the best editing, fancy, but then in terms of me being able to just collaborate with somebody and say, hey, can you help me finish editing this? And then I just kind of threw this stuff in, and then it's just easy. It's not the most sophisticated yet, but it's
mostly social videos, kind of things,
shorts,
shorts.
Yeah,
and
nothing
video.
Nothing the complicated, nice shorts.
Okay.
So shorts where it's you're not, it's nothing complicated. My 1 minute video, short,
not highly
story.
produced, but
no.
that's the look. It's supposed to be genuine
exactly.
and a real person, and I'm connecting with them. But it looks a little. Here's a PDF, or here's a screenshot.
And even my courses are not complicated. And I do the editing in Canva too, because it's just I'm going through the slides, slide in, slide that, and all that stuff. Some have my face, and it doesn't need to be this. I'm not shooting everything on really nice cameras. I'm basically showing infographics, and stuff like that. I can edit that easily in Canva. So.
Very, very light and nimble.
All in one place. And then so unlike say, I've done Premiere, I've done those too, but it's hard to integrate like assets and things like that. And that's the nice thing about sometimes I'll just throw all my assets into Canva because it's easier for me to import and just put my design elements and photos.
It's interesting.
And all that stuff.
We don't use Canva on that level at all.
I use it for storage. Because you have a terabyte of storage in Canva.
Wow. Okay.
So those are the things that I'm like, you're not using Canva enough if you're not using these things. I'll use it for storage, because instead of using Dropbox, I can use Canva. I can store all my photos in there and use more easily. I can just drop things in, drop it in. And so when you're just making a social graphic, that's all you need. You
Yep.
don't need anything fancy. So, yeah, like, I mean, just like things. So I think
Wow. Okay. No, I'm intrigued now. I'll spend the rest of the afternoon playing around in Canva. I don't think I'll ever get rid of Adobe, but I can see what you're talking about. I mean, if you have all that stuff, you've almost created not just a portal with a resources library, but then a workspace as well, where you can go build things.
Exactly. And there they have docs. And then there's also, you can basically, you've got like something that functions as ChatGPT inside their docs, where you can have them write stuff for you. It's really quite powerful, like the extent of what you can use it for. And then so that's why I would never get rid of Adobe. I used Adobe just as much. I mean, not just as much. I think because there's so many different aspects of my business that's not in design. So I probably use Canva more. But then when I truly need great designs, I mean, like, I can't, like, I have to do it with Adobe. Like, I have to. And so, I mean, there are different things. I can't print still in camera. Like, I can't print well. So, like, if I'm like working in print and I need to make tags and things like that, Canva is still a big pain.
Yeah, we did a podcast about that, talking about, we've had requests where I built my trade show booth in Canva, and we're like,
oh, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
We'll take that from here and do it ourselves.
So.
Is there anything that keeps you up at night? What worries you? What do you see? Now that you deal with a lot of these people who are passionate now about their brand, is there anything that, I mean, we've got, AI is always a benefit and a little bit of a threat. There's a mixed message around AI. Is there just overall, I mean, I think people overall are understanding more and more the power of a brand and how that can be leveraged in business and outside of business even.
I mean, I think that, like, my favorite thing to do probably is Brand in a Week and the program that I built. I love working with clients and like getting that light bulb moment. And I think that that's truly what I'm after, is like, them feeling finally comfortable in their own skin. I think that's everything to me. And then so, but when it comes to, say, what keeps me at night is just, it's my own business, and it's how hard it is to run my own business. That's the hard part, right? It's that, like, the content creation, the having to market and create and work with clients and all of that at the same time. And, like, my boss is a slave driver. She's hard on me. Like,
she's right here today.
I know. Too,
right?
I mean, and I realize that sometimes I'm like, yeah, I have to kind of separate the bodies and realize, stop being so hard on yourself. And because I realize I might have unrealistic expectations. And that progress takes time. But like, having to do it all, that's the stuff that keeps me up at night. Having to do my own marketing, having to work with my clients, having to do the content creation, having to do all of that as, I have, amazing VA that I work with. I contract out when I can, but at the same time, at the end of the day, it's all on me. And the vision sometimes it's hard because, what I realize, and I know you totally understand this, is that, like, you have ideas and you just want to run with all of your ideas at the same time. And then like, when they don't, you take time, like, like building your email list, building your community, building all that takes time. It's not going to happen overnight. Lightning can strike, but you have to be ready. When, I've struck lightning, actually. I've had a viral video, but then I was not in a place in my business to take advantage of that, or I knew how. And then so, that opportunity comes and goes. And then so at the end of the day, as a marketer for my own business, I realized that I have to, I have to be kinder to myself. I have to give myself patience. I have to realize these really good things build over time, and that trending things won't last, but you can lean into it, take advantage of the trending things. But however, at the end of the day, it's like understanding what your strategy is and then being hyper focused and staying true and consistent to it, even though there are a million shiny objects that will get in the way and like distract you from it, because they do. And
I think that is everywhere, right? I mean, we have so much choice now, and that's what drives you crazy.
It drives me crazy, and that's the stuff that keeps it at night. It's not my work. I love my work, and I do think that like that's what I was put on earth to do. Like, is to really listen, and is to really help people to see. And if I can get them just to see a glimpse of who they are and what they're made to be, I feel like I can help them to do anything, because they have me. Even if they feel like they can't do it for themselves, they have me. And then they have some, like, so I feel like that's what happens at the end of that program, right? Like, even if they say, even after that program, they're like, you know what? I don't know if I was made to do this. I don't know if I can do this design on my own, but hey, like, I've got everything out of their heads and I can help them bring it to completion.
It just builds that partnership. It speaks a little bit too. We speak a little bit about the quality of long-term relationships that we've got with some of our clients. There's a shorthand that develops over time.
And there's a trust.
Yeah, there's a shared history, and you can refer back to that. And by saying 2 words, you have a 10,000 word story in your head, and you can kind of lean into that.
Yeah, and it's again putting aside my own ego. It's not just about me either. It's about them being able to communicate to anyone they hire down the line. And that's powerful, is that I want them to be able to hire another designer. I want them to be able to hire an illustrator and a photographer and be able to know that they'll like nail it because they can communicate what they're wanting.
Yeah. Is it B2B? Is it B2C? Who makes up the people that go through your BrandSpark process?
That's the thing, is that they come to me, right? Like I thought it was the product-based business, but when I put it like that, like when I'm like having them to design, they were like, I all need this. So that's why I'm in a program with just so many different kinds of people. And but I do feel like the people who really thrive and they love it, I do think that the product-based businesses love it just because there's so much more application they can do with it. So I see a lot more of what they can do, because they can make tags, they can make labels, they can make signage, they can make all of these things, and their social media and their websites, all of those things. Whereas there's less necessarily like application with some others, but then that is still nonetheless just as important.
Sure. Even if it's in an email. And the email needs to not only look good, but it also needs to sound right too.
Your presentation, everyone I feel like needs a presentation somehow, right? Like when you're doing a pitch, when you're doing some kind of, like something. And so like, I like to really like get people to do that. So I have people coming in here, they're like, I want to do a website. I'm like, don't do that right now. Like, put together a presentation, because when you're putting to the presentation, you get a better sense of like how your words will flow with a certain background, with imagery. And then, after this program, then you can translate this into something more complicated.
In a sense, the going through building a presentation is in a sense like building a website. I mean, you could really take that and translate
without all the
that
technical stuff that you need to think about. Which platform do I mean? Like, I don't want you to spend your time even thinking about that right now.
You can even hand that off onto a designer and say, these 2 pages are going to be this page.
Yep.
This page is going to be the home page.
Exactly.
And, that's kind of a cool way to think about
that. Yeah.
Because that's something that everybody can do.
Everything
they can design.
Can do. And that's why I'm really surprised that there is not a specific niche. And like and I think that's rare, because I tell everyone to pick a niche. You know what I mean? Like there isn't a specific like dream client for me. It's like it's more about a matter of timeline. Where they are, that they have been doing this and like basically building a business for 3 to 5 years. And they have like really taken traction. They've started selling, they have some money, but they realize that they don't look buttoned up. They don't look where they need to be in order for them to grow some more.
They want to go to that next level.
Yeah, they need to go to that next level. And then that's for all of them. There's different ways of looking at this, right? Different philosophies of hiring. And, I like, and even in my own stuff, like having like to do wear so many different hats in my own business, I wouldn't know how to hand off to somebody if I hadn't figured that out for myself. And then so that's why I still feel like no matter what, you need to figure this out first. I'm not like, so that's the thing, is that like, I I've talked to designers who have kind of like given me the, like, you know, the side eye, like, are you serious? Are you really doing this kind of thing? And then, so I have to get over that, right? Like there was a time when I personally had a really like internal struggle because I felt a little bit embarrassed hanging around with like a designer circle where I'm like, I'm going to get judged by all these designers because I'm like basically, you know, maybe training a bunch of subpar designs, right? And then so, but for me, I realized it's way beyond that. It's not even about that. Like I actually want these designers to know that like, no, you actually need to understand this part of this process right now in this time in our industry. And then it doesn't take away from your jobs.
Well, that's the thing about designers is that, you know, they think they've got it all in their heads. And if sometimes the better the designer, the more of that feeling they have, you know, and it's just kind of, that perfection. I can do it all. I've got control. But the reality is that, you know, all of these tools are democratizing. They're bringing in all kinds of people to it. So we can't just fight that as designers, discount everything because it's not the way we do it. You know, there is value to allowing, you know, we build templates for a lot of our clients and just hand them off and like, good luck.
Yeah.
You know? And they love that. That empowers them. They don't have to call us every week or 2 days or something like that. So
that's the whole thing with being, you know, being inclusive and also, you know, not having a scarcity mindset when it comes to this stuff is that like, I feel like, this is why I my passion is in education, right? Like, and not to say that like it replaces the craft. It's just that like, you know, people need to have a better sense of who they are. Yeah. And I feel like it's such a psychological process. It's like therapy, you know, like people come out like having a better sense of who they are, even if they are like, okay, I'm going to admit I cannot do this design. I need you to do it for me. But now I feel so much more connected to what I actually can create.
Do you have incorporate a crying couch into your process at all? Do you think that that's important? Maybe you need to have a virtual crying couch?
You know what's crazy is that like I think half of my like during the brand new week I am like soothing people because they're frustrated. And I have to constantly remind that I'm like, you know what? Like this is so important. I have to constantly remind the pain you're feeling going through right now is going to lead to your breakthrough. You have to feel this. And this is going to be what's hard for me to like, and that's the thing is that like I'm still in the process of combining my deliver it for you and this into something in the middle, right? So I'm still trying to like figure out the best, most efficient way for me to do that on a one-on-one basis outside of this group because they get more out of me if I can work with them one-on-one because now also that incorporates some business coaching and there's some like marketing coaching that goes into that, like that has like that can tailor more into that. But the thing is, I don't want them to feel like, oh, Calvin is in my corner now; she can do all my design. And I'm like, no, because you actually like I need to get them to that pain where they're almost crying. Like, you know, and they're like, I don't get it. Like this, I can't do this. I can't. I'm like, no, you can. I see it. Like, and I don't like how many times do I like, I'm always like, I actually see it. You don't see it. I see it, but it's not enough for me to see it. You've got to see this. So I push them through. And I'm like, but you know, I know you're feeling the pain. You're on the verge of tears, but I promise when you get to the other side, it's going to be that much more clear to you. And then that's the pain. That's the crux of it all. That's the pain that actually is the breakthrough point for them. And that's the breakthrough point that I will never have doing when I deliver something for them.
Yeah, it's in fact, it's the opposite. You don't really want to deliver pain when you're delivering a project to somebody.
And that's what's actually hard for my own marketing. Do you see? Like, because who would buy off on
your marketing pain?
Because they want me to do it for them because that's the whole point. But then, the point of clarity is so important for the rest of their business, for the long term.
Well, that's it. It's like when you go through trauma, you tend to remember that stuff, and that's what you're kind of bringing to bear a little bit is we're going to go through some tough times. We're going to have some hard conversations. You're going to cry. Thank you again for being here. Could you share with us again how people might want to get in touch with you?
Yeah. So I am at YourBrandSpark.com and I'm on YourBrandSpark in all of the places, Instagram, TikTok, and Pinterest, I'm still in Calvina, but anyway, I'm just like all the platforms. And if you actually are interested in Brand in a Week, you can just go to brandinaweek.com and get to the Brand in a Week course. And then there's a waiting list. I'm opening up my next cohort in October, the 1st of October. And then, we run that through basically, for 3 months. But this is going to be until February, actually, because there's holidays and I like to take time off during the holidays.
Good for you.
So, yeah, I'm actually very active on social media. I'm active on Instagram, on TikTok. It's a lot of work.
Yes. The social channels can...
Oh, my gosh.
Be a little bit of a time suck for sure. But, you do a good job of that stuff on there. So thank you again.
Thank you. That was so fun. Thank you for having me. I loved it. I loved being here. I mean, look at this.
I mean, you got fake plants everywhere. Look
Amazing.
at this. You can't go wrong. You're allowed to cry, Those even encourage it here. I'm crying. Thanks for tuning in. For more information and other episodes, subscribe to the Marketing Team of One podcast on YouTube, Apple, or Spotify podcast networks. You can also chat with us on the r/Marketing Team of One subreddit or visit marketingteamofone.com to learn more.